Hi, it is Katie here from becomeagroupguru.com. There are so many of you here live right now for this, and we are having some technical difficulties with getting Lynn on the screen. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to introduce what it is that Lynn is going to be talking about. Lynn's going to try and reset, and then she's going to let me know when she's ready to go here. And then what we will do is get her to hop on and answer some questions and share about her group. But in the meantime, I will answer any questions that you guys have about group activities, group anything in general, because I don't want to keep you all waiting here. So Lynn, go ahead and let us know in the comments when you're back, and I'll invite you on the screen. But in the meantime, I'll introduce some of the things that Lynn had shared, and we'll just go from there. So, you know, I thank you for being here and allowing us to be human. So many of you have this resistance to like going live or showing up because you're afraid that something's not going to work and that it's going to decrease your credibility. So I'm here to say that we can still share tons of information and share of value even when something doesn't work exactly as it was meant to. So Lynn Dutrow is anti-anxiety. You may have seen she's done some amazing Facebook Lives and some really great posts on her Facebook page. She calls herself anti-anxiety, and she has this like alter ego that allows her to step into this role of really partnering with people and helping them through their anxiety. And I love the fact that she has a niche that is so specific, works with both kids, teens, and adults with anxiety. So one of the things that I think is important when people have such trouble narrowing down their niche is that they want to like find a specific presenting concern, a specific diagnosis, a specific demographic or age group, but it can really be anything that you want. It can be a personality type. It can be like quirky, creative people, highly sensitive people, people with anxiety. It can really be whatever you connect best with. And one of the things that I have learned, at least for myself, is that narrowing down my niche means finding that person who's a past version of myself that I have already worked through and kind of helped to heal. And so I'm able to help them and understand them in a way that is unique to what it is that they're doing and to the population that they, the presenting concerns that they have. Lynn says she is here. I'm going to try again to invite her on the screen and we can get started. All right, Lynn, let me find you in this list. Let's go. Let's do this. Thank you all for being so patient. Like I said, it is a process, and I appreciate you being flexible here. Okay, here we go. Lynn, inviting you on the screen. Let's see how this goes. Accepted. All right. Accepted and connecting. So she should be here any second. Accepted and connecting. So Lynn Dutrow is anti-anxiety, and here she is. Hi.
Very anxious at the moment, actually.
Oh my gosh, you and me both, right? So it is anxiety provoking for sure to not know what's happening, to have the uncertainty, and you're the expert here to help us through all of our anxiety. Welcome. All right. So I kind of gave you an intro. You are anti-anxiety. Your niche is working with people with anxiety. We are going to do, like I shared, this is the group therapy gala. So lots of brief trainings about groups and the kinds of groups that you guys run, because I think it's important for everyone to feel inspired by all of you because you're all doing such amazing things. So tell us a little bit about just your groups in general, what it is you do. Give us like your blurb.
Sure. So since I work with people who are anxious, sometimes getting them together in a group is like, well, it's actually more challenging than herding cats. So, but as I've been more committed to this, I really recognize how important it is for people who have anxiety to face their anxieties, which means facing their anxiety about being in a group and talking about their issue with other people. So it's been an interesting challenge to get them together. But once we do, how important, what great work can be done when they are together in a group. So.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I've seen a couple other people in our free Facebook group that almost use like the excuse of, well, anxious people, they have a hard time getting out and meeting other people, and that's a barrier to filling the group. And I want to validate that it is for sure, but it's not an obstacle that can't be overcome, and you've certainly overcome it and created groups that are really great.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So tell us about what your group looks like, just the typical or like the general structure and what someone could expect from one of your groups.
Yeah. Yeah. So my longest running group is my adult group, and the age range is about 25, 26, up to, I have somebody in their 60s in the group. Actually, a couple of people in the 60s. And I structure the groups as ongoing. I did actually just switch over to making it kind of like a membership, similar to what you do, which I think is going to work a lot better. It's been a trial and error. You know, I would let them pay for 4 sessions, and then they would use them whenever. But what I started realizing is it's not like an individual session where if they can't come, I can get somebody else, you know, in their spot. So we talked about it, and that is working. The way the actual group itself works, I'm sorry, let me turn my mail off here so I'm not so distracted. It was off before, and then I had to check it again because I was trying to get in here.
I know.
So the structure of it is, it's pretty open-ended. I do follow a process that I came up with about getting aligned with your anxiety. So align, standing for things like acceptance, leaning in, you know, ignite your passion, you know, so embracing, you know, all of those things. And so we loosely follow that. Some weeks we work on one of those letters or one of those concepts, but some weeks we follow the lead of whatever is going on. So we always start with as I say it, you know, so this, in the past week has, you know, anxiety bitten you in the ass, or have you kicked its ass? And that's sort of our, you know, happy and crappy, however people phrase it. And so sometimes what will happen is somebody will come up with something, either a win or a challenge, and the group will just go from there in terms of that'll be the topic of the week. And like I said, my adult groups have been going, there are probably, I would say, well, there's 2 members from the very original, and all of the members now, you know, have been there at least a couple months. And so they're really in a flow, and it works really well to do it that way.
I'm curious about a couple things in what you're saying. The first being, like, how does it work for you to have, you know, young adults and 60 plus in the same group, because they're at different stages in their life, right? But they could both be experiencing anxiety. So what's that mix like for you?
It's really been interesting. When I say 25, I'm going to reframe it. She's in her 20s, but she may be closer to 30, but it's still a wide range. And at first I thought, wow. But they do, they reach out. You know, the older ones say, I remember when, you know, and I can relate to that. And I think the younger ones appreciate, there's almost, you know, not that I'm going for security, because my big thing is to help people not feel secure and be comfortable not feeling secure. But I do think a little bit of comfort for the younger members to be able to talk to people who've been through it. And you say that even though I'm still dealing with it, here's what I've done. So yeah, I wondered the same thing when these are the folks that showed up. So I do have, I'm getting ready to start a group that's specifically for young adults. And my idea would be, you know, sort of 18 to 26-ish. You know, so that's forming right now. But I definitely feel like the age range has actually worked out. They're so supportive of each other, and they do their best to relate to, well, I'm not your age, but this is what I can relate to based on what you're saying.
Right. And I think that makes sense. There are definitely ways to connect that are not age-based.
Yeah.
Can you guys all hear? Because Allie says she can't hear. I mean, I can hear you fine, Lynn, so I just want to make sure everyone else can hear. So yes, Bess can hear. Thank you. Thank you, guys. My next question would be about, like, okay, so I'm a DBT trained therapist, and my perspective that I come to things with is, like, the more dysregulated someone is, the more structure that they need, both in their life and in their sessions. So how does it work, considering that people come to you already anxious and there's a loose structure, but they don't always know what to expect? Is that strategic on your end?
It is strategic on my end in some ways. And I actually will share, I did have one member, I had to, how do I want to put this? I had to tweak my screening process, because I actually got someone in the group. So my groups are psychoeducational support. And so they're not really a therapy group. And so I'm really clear with people that if they feel like they really need a therapy group, this group is not it. That's not what my groups are for. And I did have somebody come through who needed more of a therapy group and needed more structure. And the interesting thing was that when I pulled some structure in by using my process instead of just letting it be a free flow, it was better. The sessions got better, and then he and I came to an agreement that it wasn't a good fit. So yes, I see where if somebody's seriously dysregulated, having significant issues, that is not what my groups are set up for. I would help them find whether it be individual or another group that might be a more therapeutic, structured group than what I'm offering. Yeah.
So you make a distinction between the two.
I do.
And can you talk about how you bring psychoeducation into a free-flowing group like that? Is it just like as they're sharing, you enter in little things? Because that's what I do in my process groups. Yes. But do you have it? Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly how I do it. So I've always been about teachable moments. If anything, I've struggled is my background is psychology and early childhood education. And I can remember my student teaching, my weakness was always the, where they wanted you to spell everything out that you were going to do. And it's like, I've got a loose idea here, and I've got I've always got something I can pull from. But I'm very, I'm very intuitive, I'm very empathic. And so I want to go with where the group's going, not where plus I'm also really hard-headed. So if I plan everything out, I want to follow that plan. So it's worked better to do it that way, which is just really feel what the group, or an individual in the group and go with that. And so that's where I can bring in, somebody mentions something and I'm like, oh, well, this. So I've been to this rodeo before. I've done this for a long time. So when you have all those experiences to bring from, that makes that process easier. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it makes a lot of sense. Like I, like you, have an idea of what I want to do in my groups. And even in my DBT groups that are, psychoeducational and structured groups, I run 3 of them each week. And depending on the population that's coming in, that group can look completely different. I could have the same plan, but it still looks different. So you have to be flexible in that process.
Right. Yeah.
So tell us about your favorite group or one of the favorite group activities that you do, just to share and inspire everyone who's here with us.
Oh my gosh. So we did one yesterday. So in the teen group, I don't remember if it was the first, it might've been the first or second session. One of the things that I do is work towards helping people personify anxiety. That's why I use the capital A and that sort of thing, because when you can personify the anxiety, then you can have a chat with it. You can dialogue, you can see it differently. And so one of the first things that we do is an activity where, and I've even done this with the adults, so I do it with every age range. I have them draw, like, what does your anxiety look like? How does it show up for you? And so we get this range, from the monsters to the bugs to, just the crazy, whatever, the sad faces. There's lots of different ways that anxiety shows up. And so usually we wait about 2 weeks and we work through that process of understanding how this works. And then we hand it back to them, and we may hand it back a couple times. But so what we did yesterday, we hand back and we say, so what we do is we talk a little bit more about their goals. Like, what are some of the things that anxiety is keeping them from doing? And then we go back and we take that picture and we talk about and have them put words to it of, but what anxiety's goals for you? Like, where is where are you guys in conflict because anxiety has different goals for you? And so that was a really neat process yesterday with the teen group. That's where we were in the process to start understanding, and then talking about how, the cognitive term would be, sort of like that reframing or restructuring. So it's like, this is anxiety's goal for you. Why might that be the goal for you? Like, why is that? And then how do you turn that around? How can we look at this differently in terms of where that's coming from? Rather than just viewing anxiety as this big bully, you got to get to know the bully. You got to find that scared child inside the bully. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. I love the idea of externalizing something that feels so big on the inside for you. And then, I mean, it almost sounds like you're saying learning how to partner with it and work with it, like recognize what it's doing for you.
Yes, absolutely. So we talk a lot about how anxiety is actually your superpower. I'm finding more and more when I start digging with clients that, anxious clients are, they tend to be introverted. They tend to be sensitive. So we're doing a lot of work around, how that sensitivity is actually your superpower, and then how anxiety can go from being what feels like your enemy to your ally. So the biggest barrier with any of them is getting past this idea, because I get kids that come in here and they're just like, I want it to go away. Like, I want it to go away. I've even had, this team that would just sit and rock, make it go away, make it go away. And, sorry, the bad news is it's not, here's what you can do. And by personifying it and really getting them to recognize you can change it from being an enemy into an ally. It can be your friend. It can work with you, and you guys can move forward together. And what a force you will be. You'll be a force to reckon with.
I love it. I really do. Wait, I had a question based on what you're saying, and it just slipped out of my mind. But,
that never happens to me.
Harnessing what it is that's been so troublesome for you and learning how to work with it and make it work for you.
Yeah.
So I guess in moving in that direction, asking you, like, what has been your biggest obstacle in groups, in running and facilitating them, and how have you overcome it or learned to work with it?
So I've learned a couple of things. One is when I first started this time around doing groups, because I've liked groups before. I just wasn't always in a position where we could, I could make that happen. So it had been a while since I'd run a group. So back in probably in January, right after I sort of discovered you and started going through your course and working on this, I tend to be introverted as well. My go-to is always, I'm going to be overwhelmed. Like, I'm going to ask, and like, there's going to be too many people who come. And when I did the numbers and whatever, I was going for 8 clients in groups, and I was never hitting the 8. And then one day it just dawned on me, it's like, because I don't really want 8 in a group. Like, that doesn't work for me. 8 doesn't work. 6, maybe 7. That's a really good number in group. And so once I once I embraced that and accepted that for myself, now I have a whole different way of, you may have seen earlier today, I just had this opportunity with the tween group didn't work out. So I'm doing this young adult group, and I'm excited to put things on Facebook. I'm excited to put it out to the group. I'm not holding back because I had a number that wasn't working for me, in my subconscious. You're going for 8, it's too many. And so when I finally brought that to the forefront and dealt with it, it's like, no, I'm going for 6, and 6 is going to be awesome. And this is what this is going to look like, because that's what my adult group is. My adult group is at 6. And I realized, well, I'm not inviting anybody else in. I'm not advertising this because this is working. That and the other piece was the tween group, having people wanting the tween group. And so I recognized I don't really want to work with the tweens, not by myself. And so I actually pulled another therapist in. And so we'll eventually get the tween group up and running. I think right now we're working through us figuring out how to work together and what that looks like. So yeah, it's digging down into, when stuff's not working, it's digging down into my subconscious in terms of what am I thinking or doing that's making this not happen yet.
So you and I are like 100% aligned on that when something isn't working, it's typically because something's not working within you. And I love that you were willing to dig deep and really figure that out. So I think, along with your acronym for anxiety being aligned, that is like one of the number one tips in terms of getting people through the door. It's just figuring that piece of it out.
Yeah.
You have a question. I don't know what it is. Are you willing to answer an audience question?
Sure.
It says, Nicole says, I was wondering if you could say more about how to help prospective clients understand the difference between psychoeducational groups versus therapeutic groups. Can you answer that in terms of your anxiety group? Like, what would the distinction for you be?
So the distinction for me is and I might say this differently to a parent. I don't know. I'm 50 years old and I don't filter so much anymore. And so, because it's also important for people to know that this is how it goes. But I would say something probably along the lines of, I don't care whether your child actually has a diagnosis of anxiety or not. Like that, that to me is kind of the distinction is, I want to hear about them, and that my groups are, they do well for kids who have, OCD and generalized anxiety disorder, but that's not what I'm going to get caught up in. And so I want these groups to just be open and not be over focused on the actual disorder or the label. And so I'm bringing in I'm teaching them. And I'm supporting them. And that's not necessarily what, an insurance company or anybody else is going to consider to be therapeutic. And I've had a couple parents that it didn't really matter how I explained it. They struggled. I had one mom who just kept saying, just give me an invoice. I'm turning it into the insurance company. She has a diagnosis from her individual therapist. And I'm like, that's fine. But that invoice is not going to have her diagnosis on it. It's not going to have a code on it, because this is a coaching group. And then sometimes I will, when people can hear that, I explain the difference between coaching and counseling, so.
Yeah. And I think that makes sense. And it probably depends on the practitioner, that distinction between a therapy group and a psychoeducational group. Like, I think for my groups, DBT, which from my perspective would be considered psychoeducational, I still will provide a super bill for them to submit for insurance because I do some processing within there. So for me, there is a blurred line, and I do, support my client base in that way and give them a diagnosis if that's something they're signing off and agreeing on. So, the answer varies depending on who you're talking to and what it is.
It does. And for me, I've looked at it, I've gone around with it. But I also, for me, the group is that affordable option that I have. And so it makes it a whole lot less affordable when I have to go farther into, all of the details of that and be held accountable in that way. I hold myself accountable over here. So to me, it's clear if I'm doing the majority of the talking, which, a lot of times I am, because it's a teaching process. And so I feel like, and it's very clear that they do not, insurance is not going to reimburse for a psychoeducational support group. So I'm just not been there, done that, not doing that again. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's kind of funny. I had one of the therapists at my center. She wanted to run an anxiety group for teens, but she wanted to run it like a process group. It was a closed 6-week group. And for like 3 of them, they all just sat there, did not know what to do. And so I had to work with her to shift gears and make it more psychoeducational and make it more interactive and hands-on, because they were just like sitting there. So I think you need to know your population and how to work with them.
Right. And that's exactly. So like the teen group, and that's to where I appreciate Lynn, who I've brought into the teen group, because she's more energized around like the activities and things. And so she brings that to the table, because with the teens, and I knew the tweens would be that way. And so that's why I had pulled her on originally is, I have the concepts and I can talk all day about it, but they're going to sit there, they're going to sit, whereas the adults talk and interact. And sometimes I don't get a word in edgewise. And so, it is knowing the age and the stage and all of that stuff with them too. So the teens, we're more, and the young adults probably even, there'll be more, sort of activities to pull that out. Whereas don't need that with the adults so much. Yeah.
And one of the other things that you said that I think is important, I want to highlight, is being willing to pivot, right? Like you had this tween group idea and it wasn't feeling like you wanted it to, and then you recognized it wasn't really for you, but that it sounds like, and I wouldn't, but it sounds like you also did not consider that a failure. It was more of like, oh, I recognize this is not for me. Let's pivot. Let's go on to the next thing. And that's fine, without harping on this idea of like other people in the community are going to see this as like me being a failure or messing up in some way.
No, because if anything, what I said is it's still out there as an option. Actually, like in my newsletter, I just said, because I knew that some of the parents and grandparents who had asked me about it in the spring are on my newsletter list. And so I basically just said, all these people were asking about it and none of them are available right now. And for those of you who are those people, like take a deep breath, because it's not going away. You just let me know when you really are ready, and then we'll see what we can do to make it fit. I have 2 offices now. I have a lot more flexibility. I have no problem reaching out and pulling in another therapist who wants to do this. And so, maybe in the spring, we'll get that up and running if that is really what the universe says it's time for. So
love it. I think you have one more question, and then I'm going to ask you like top tip, and then we'll wrap it up. So Bess asks, what has been the best marketing source for young adults? I'm having trouble accessing them. I've called college counseling centers, inpatient partial hospitals, and local therapists. So what's been your best marketing tip?
Well, interesting. I've actually avoided the young adults because I wasn't sure where to market them to. And so honestly, right now, the 3 that I have signed up are current clients. And so I'm trying to think where each of them came from. I don't even know if I can remember 2 of them. One of them is actually a current EAP client who just happens to be a recent college graduate. And he came and he's talking about how lonely he was. And I was like, would you want to participate in a group with other, the other 2 are, and he's like, yeah. So I'm like, okay. So I'd have to get back to you on that because I am, I've put 2 posts out on Facebook and boosted them successfully. The first one actually went on without having to redo something because I've been working through that. The second one this morning, they didn't like my use of the word ass, but apparently they like this little star. So as soon as I went A ***, it got boosted. So, yeah, I'll have to tell you, let you in on whether, because this is probably the first time that I've really straight from the beginning sort of used your process in terms of I boosted one that was very informational, and then I boosted one today that's sort of the creating the urgency and scarcity sort of thing, but there's 3 seats left. And I saw that post. Yeah, and I think the biggest thing with any population is being patient. And doing the things, that you've set out. I know, Laura Long, in your Badass Therapy practice, she really advocates, just like you do, building the relationships with referral sources. So, reaching out and building those so that people know what you're doing because they're the ones that are connecting to those folks. And then just allowing that to take time because sometimes it can be, months or so before that person comes across somebody and then they're thinking about it at the same time. So it's just building that reputation in the community.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would agree with that.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm getting better with everything that you shared about how to use the Facebook in a way that's actually getting engagement and not just exposure.
Yeah. In a way that actually gets people to call you and reach out to you, which is so important. It needs to be profitable and not just like a thing that's there.
Yeah. So I will tell you, so if I get anybody from the Facebook ad, I will make sure to blare that in the group and let you guys know how that worked.
Thank you. Sure. So give us your top tip for running your group, because that's what we're trying to do here. Give tips for running. And I know you all have marketing questions too, and that's cool, but give us your top tip for running groups, facilitating them, what works for you.
I think going back to what we talked about, the running part of it, you got to be passionate about what you're doing. So you have to really be in, which is why I think the teen group the tween group was still having some struggle because that's not an age group that I am necessarily passionate about. I'm passionate about the idea of it, but not the doing of it. So you got to be passionate. You got to be sure not be sure. You got to know yourself, and you got to know that the group that you're running, you're not just running it because somebody told you that there's a need for it, but that you're going to be excited that, that group is that day, even if it means that you're missing dinner with your family, on that particular day. You've got to look forward to it. It's got to be fun. It's not just an obligation, I think, would be the thing. And then going back to what we were talking about, which is this being willing to be flexible, that, have something prepared, but not over prepared. And then just let the group tell you what they need, what they want, and be flexible that way.
So be flexible, and then the energy behind it is so important. Your energy and the person's investment, all of those things make a really successful group, I think. Yes, it sounds like that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for being here today. I'm so excited. We're meeting in person soon, so I'm excited for that.
I'm excited too.
So for everyone who's here watching, we actually have another training in 4 minutes with Audrey Roach Slavinsky, and she'll be talking about her adult DBT groups. So Lynn, if you want to stay tuned, we'll be back on in 5 minutes. But I appreciate you being here, and I'll see you soon.
All right. Take care.
All right, bye.